Thank you for joining us for this special edition of KPBS News. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and this week brought continued progress in San Diego's push to minimize the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Caseloads have dropped to the point that San Diego County was taken off the state's monitoring list. Now, if that holds for 2 weeks, schools might get the green light to reopen for on-campus instruction. Several smaller schools, mostly private schools, serving elementary students, have already received waivers to reopen. We'll have more on that in a moment. As for the numbers, San Diego County passed 35,000 cases and 640 deaths since March. Imperial County has seen more than 10,000 cases with more than 240 deaths. Another sign of progress is at San Diego's parks. As Max Rivlin-Nadler reports, you might start seeing fitness classes and church services happening outside.
For weeks, some churches and gyms across the county have been operating in violation of the county's health orders, mandating that they move their services fully outside. On Tuesday, Mayor Kevin Faulconer made that process easier by opening up city parks to gyms and religious services through an executive order set to take effect on Monday. He announced it during a press conference in Mira Mesa Community Park.
Fitness camps, gym classes, religious services, they can all be held in a park, giving patrons plenty of room and air to physically distance. You can pray, you can go out and do Pilates, you do it all in one of San Diego's 340 parks.
Gyms and religious institutions will still need to apply for permits for the use of public parks, but fees will be waived for the first 60 days. Krista Lombardi is the owner of Hardcore Fitness in Mira Mesa, which opened just months before the coronavirus pandemic shut down gyms across the state. She's glad for the space that parks could provide for her business.
It's obviously very difficult to members to go outside in a parking lot in the asphalt in the hot beating sun and get their workouts in.
The executive order comes on the heels of 2 other executive orders that moved businesses like restaurants and gyms outdoors, but limited them to parking lots and sidewalks. By taking advantage of the city's parks, Mayor Faulconer believes that San Diego can offer people a chance to safely worship and work out while maintaining social distancing.
We know from public health experts that being outdoors is safer, of course, than being inside a crowded environment. Let me tell you, there is no better city than San Diego to take advantage of this fact.
Faulconer expects the city council, which is currently on recess until September, to pass a bill making his executive order into law and to make the fee waiver on park permits permanent. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
As we mentioned at the start of the newscast, some schools are already getting special permission to reopen, but so far it's mostly private schools on the list. Joe Hong tells us what this might mean for inequality in education.
In July, Governor Gavin Newsom said elementary schools and their districts could request a waiver to reopen even if their county is on the state's monitoring list for high COVID case counts. So far, the San Diego Health and Human Services Agency has received 48 requests. 44 of them are from private schools. Among them are some of the priciest schools in the county that have the resources to offer extensive health safety measures.
So we're going to test every student, every faculty member, every staff member before they come onto campus.
Gary Cron is the head of school at La Jolla Country Day School, which serves more than 1,100 students. He said even if the county approves the request waiver, the school might wait to reopen.
Even though we might have the opportunity to open, we're going to look at where this disease is in our community, and we're going to look at the information we have at that time.
Cron said La Jolla Country Day has a robust reopening plan in place for when students are allowed to come back. It will offer hybrid programs that would allow some students and teachers to work from home. And students who do come to campus will not spend much time indoors.
We're not allowing any student or faculty to be inside for over 25 to 30 minutes. So half of our classes are going to be outside. So we have spent a lot of resources creating outdoor classrooms and then creating the ventilation inside.
However, with a tuition of about $30,000, La Jolla Country Day is among few schools able to provide such opportunities. This raises questions about inequities in education, which have been exacerbated by the COVID school closures. Students from low-income families and students of color are more likely to experience learning loss, and their families are more likely to suffer the economic consequences of the pandemic.
These are really complicated times, of course.
Alicia Smith-Arriaga is the executive director of the Education Trust West, a think tank studying equity in education. She doesn't blame private schools for being able to provide more for their students than public schools, but she said the federal government needs to step up and help mitigate the inequities.
And so being able to have a waiver for students that age in and of itself, if it meets public health guidelines, is not problematic. But what does get problematic are the resources associated with actually being able to implement it and what schools can do that and which schools cannot.
That said, Smith-Arriaga is hopeful that schools that can reopen sooner will share best practices for safe reopening. Cron said La Jolla Country Day School is more than willing to help. He points to the school's partnership with Rady's Children's Hospital to provide researchers with routine testing data from their asymptomatic faculty and staff.
If we fulfill our responsibility to move a little ahead, to be in front of the curve, and then share that with other schools and be a resource to them so that we can create policies that are transferable to other schools, then we're playing an important role in our community.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
An updated list of the schools granted waivers can be found at kpbs.org. Coming up a bit later, the challenge of school discipline in remote learning, how teachers, schools, and students are dealing with behavioral issues during COVID-19. Last week, we showed you how San Diego stepped up patrols in Ocean Beach to deal with people violating public health orders. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says that enforcement has been inconsistent.
San Diego County is 5 months into the COVID-19 crisis, and at many beaches, things look mostly like they did before the pandemic. Some are wearing masks and being socially distant, but plenty others aren't. And while San Diego police are going out more often to encourage safer behavior, they're not handing out tickets anymore. Joel Day is coordinating the city's public health enforcement strategy.
So our strategy is to do as much as we can to get people to come into voluntary compliance. We believe in personal responsibility. I think we all do. We understand that wearing a mask is somebody's personal responsibility.
Then there's the case of Boulevard Fitness, a gym in University Heights that for more than a month has defied several orders to shut down its indoor operations. SDPD says it gave the owner a citation last week, but the gym was still open for business, according to social media posts. Lauren Brown is a professor of public health at SDSU. She says when emphasizing personal responsibility fails and there's no enforcement to back it up, public health can suffer. And she says the failure starts at the national level.
Because we're starting at the top with really poor high-level decision-making and infrastructure around how we're going to nationally handle this virus, we're not creating good policy at a local level to better manage how many people might be exposed at, say, something like a gym.
The county's COVID-19 case rate recently fell below the threshold that put it on the state's watch list. So a crackdown on businesses or individuals flouting the public health order doesn't appear to be likely anytime soon. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
You'll notice a change the next time you visit the DMV. Visitors are now getting their temperature checked before appointments. DMV workers are using infrared thermometers to check for fevers, which is a COVID-19 symptom. Those who register under 100.4 degrees will get a sticker allowing them to stay. Those over that temperature are sent home. DMV offices are also requiring face coverings, enforcing social distancing, and allowing limited entry. Food delivery apps have seen a spike in demand during the pandemic. One local lawmaker says there needs to be better rules for how they do business. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has the story.
Many people stuck at home because of coronavirus have probably had food delivered to their door, not by a restaurant themselves, but by companies like DoorDash or Postmates. But a bill called the Fair Food Delivery Act would prevent restaurants from what some are calling food delivery exploitation.
And the person that picked it up said, oh yeah, we work with Postmates. So I did some investigation. I'm like, we're not on Postmates. How are they selling our food?
Chef Jeff Rossman owns Terra American Bistro in San Diego. He says the delivery service Postmates had listed his restaurant on their app without his permission.
It's not on my behalf. I'm not putting my best foot forward. So as an industry, we were like, that's not cool.
The California Restaurant Association says this has been an ongoing issue and is particularly hitting small businesses hard.
Right now, all the power really is in the hands of these delivery companies.
San Diego Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez authored the Fair Food Delivery Act. She points out some food doesn't travel well and customers will blame the restaurant, not the delivery service, when food arrives cold or soggy.
They think of the restaurant itself isn't adhering to the normal level of service when they've never agreed to be in this relationship.
Rossman, who represents the local California Restaurant Association, says the bill gives control back to restaurants.
This bill is really allowing us to recapture the customer and say, hey, you know, we're behind our food. It's our menu that we put on your application. It's not just you picking something that we don't think is going to travel well.
Today, Rossman uses delivery services at his eatery. The Fair Food Delivery Act would mandate food delivery services have an agreement with restaurants in order to work with them. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
San Diego's jobs situation is going in the wrong direction as the unemployment rate ticks up. The region's unemployment rate climbed to 14.2% in August, according to a new report by Sandag. That translates to about 200,000 people. The uptick comes after a couple of weeks of declining numbers. Economists involved with the report say it's a sign that jobs aren't returning fast enough. The neighborhood with the highest jobless rate is Logan Heights at 18.9%. Businesses are trying to keep their workers and they're pleading for help. They're asking for $500 million in relief, but county leaders say the money simply isn't there. Once again, here's KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman.
More than 4,400 San Diego County businesses and nonprofits are asking for more than $650 million in economic aid due to the pandemic.
It's just very telling with the amount of applicants and the amount of dollars requested, the heavy hit this has had on our businesses and economy.
The problem is the county has just over $20 million in grants to hand out.
So many requests and so little money.
The stimulus grants come from CARES Act dollars and are being distributed by supervisor districts, meaning each of the 5 districts has about $4 million in grant money. In County Supervisor Jim Desmond's District 5, just under 1,000 businesses are asking for a collective $182 million.
I think we figured out, though, if we were to give everybody the same amount, that'd be like $4,500 each.
Desmond says he's going to try and help as many businesses as he can, and he isn't planning on giving grants above $50,000.
You know, what I'm looking for and looking at is, you know, businesses that have been forced to close, you know, restaurants and things like that. They've been forced to close and reopen and close again. You know, a lot of those are salons and gyms and places like that.
Across the county, restaurants and the food and beverage industry in general make up a large chunk of the applications. Officials are also seeing childcare centers, dental offices, private practices, and retail stores asking for aid.
Manufacturing, construction, the whole gamut. I mean, financial institutions, cleaning services, nonprofits.
Desmond would also like the federal government to provide more economic aid.
The government shut them down, and now the government doesn't have the resources to help them stay open or limp along here.
Here's a breakdown of applications for the Small Business Grant Program countywide. Supervisor Greg Cox in District 1 has received at least 455 applications totaling $78 million, while Supervisor Diane Jacob in District 2 has received at least 747 applications totaling $88 million. District 3 Supervisor Kristen Gaspar has gotten at least 929 grant requests totaling $129 million. In District 4, Nathan Fletcher's office has at least 1,200 applications asking for a combined $178 million. And in Desmond's D5, there were 940 applications totaling $182 million. Applications for relief in Gaspar's District 3 and Fletcher's District 4 are open through mid-October. Supervisors will have to approve allocations in each district, something that could happen as early as next month. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
One of San Diego's biggest tourist attractions might reopen soon. A partial reopening for SeaWorld has been approved by the county. Under the state's guidance for zoos, SeaWorld will be allowed to reopen outdoor sections of the theme park. Indoor aquariums and rides would remain off limits. And despite the new guidance, SeaWorld has yet to make any announcement on its reopening plan. It has been closed since March. It's not just large companies like SeaWorld struggling right now. Smaller organizations like the Living Coast Discovery Center in Chula Vista are still caring for animals during the shutdown. KPBS reporter John Carroll has their story.
Looking for a description of the Living Coast Discovery Center online yielded this: an environmental education center. A rather dry way to describe a truly magical place.
We really focus on kind of bringing people and local wildlife together and getting people really inspired and passionate about stuff that they can find right in their own backyards.
The Living Coast Discovery Center encompasses 3 acres inside the 316-acre San Diego Bay National Wildlife Refuge, a critical wetland where all sorts of animals thrive.
You also get to see really cool stuff like ospreys catching fish and lots of diverse collection of shorebirds.
The Discovery Center is home to dozens of birds and marine mammals. Many of them are brought to the center because they cannot live in the wild, like Kelsey's friend Hawkeye, who is blind in one eye.
We are home to not only the animals who can't go back into the wild, but also a refuge for those who unfortunately are being displaced due to a lot of human impact.
Then there's the impact of COVID-19. It has forced the Discovery Center to close, which means critical revenue used to keep the place running is gone.
The majority of our revenue does come not only from admissions, but also from school groups and field trips and things like that.
Now, the Living Coast Discovery Center is just trying to hold on until they can welcome visitors again. They're in the midst of a fundraiser. They need to raise another $100,000 by the end of the month to make their goal of $500,000. Donations can be made at the Discovery Center's website, thelivingcoast.org. Donations that will help save a unique piece of coastal beauty for generations to come. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Child care providers will soon be able to apply for grants to cover COVID-19 related costs. The county will distribute $25 million in CARES Act money to eligible providers. The San Diego Foundation will also provide an additional $10 million in grants to support children and families and access to affordable child care over the next 5 years.
They have great challenges, limitations in the number of kids, restrictions on how they operate, limitations on parents' ability to pay. And so this $35 million will be directly used to try and get more child care centers up and running to be able to safely care for more children.
In-home daycares can apply for grants of around $3,000, while larger child care centers can get between $100 and $175 per child. The application period will open Monday through the San Diego Foundation. In the COVID era, classrooms might be virtual, but disruptive student behaviors are still very real, and so are the consequences. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong spoke to school leaders about distance learning and discipline.
Earlier this month, on the first day of the new school year in the Sweetwater Union High School District, a student brandished a firearm during a virtual class session. The police were called and officers arrived at the student's residence to find that the weapon was a BB gun and no one was harmed. Later in the week, the district, which was the first in the county to start the fall semester, received reports of students sharing pornographic images during online classes. These disruptive behaviors add yet another layer to the challenges facing teachers and administrators as they restart school in the COVID era.
In the last couple of weeks, as we've seen some incidents happen.
Manny Rubio is the spokesman for the Sweetwater Union High School District. He said the expectations for student behavior are the same as they were before the pandemic.
If you were in a classroom, it's, respecting your classmates, your fellow classmates, respecting the teacher that's in front of you giving the lesson, asking questions that are thoughtful and very, that are appropriate for the class.
But educators across the county know that while rules for behavior have stayed the same, the classroom experience is completely different.
This is a new environment for students. The rules are not established.
Jamie Dayhoff is the Director of Attendance and Discipline at Poway Unified. He said the new setting will likely lead to unpredictable student behaviors.
We make some assumptions that kids know that, when you're in your bedroom or you're at the dining room table doing this stuff, that the same, you're held to the same levels of conduct that you would be if you're sitting in a classroom. And I don't think we can make those assumptions.
The state education code requires suspensions and even expulsions for certain offenses. And Dayhoff and other school officials made it clear that students will still be punished for disrupting online classes. But they also acknowledged they'll have to take extra steps to make sure the punishments don't further exacerbate the problems schools have connecting with students while classes are online. Rubio said Sweetwater is having counselors reach out to students and parents to better understand negative behaviors.
And so what we want to understand is this, just a case of, a kid trying to make a disruption just for the sake of it, just for the sake of doing it, or is there something behind that? And so we really want to get to the root cause of what's going on.
School officials are also quick to say that they are still working to emphasize restorative justice and other alternatives to punitive discipline, in part to eliminate the disproportionate impact on students of color, students with disabilities, and low-income students. But advocates worry that when physical campuses reopen, teachers and administrators will revert to overly punitive practices in the potentially dangerous learning environment created by the pandemic.
I do see racial and disability and income disparities magnified when we do open up schools.
Daniel Lowson is the director of the Center for Civil Rights Remedies at UCLA. He's concerned, for example, that a shoving match between students or a confrontation with a teacher where a student violates social distancing could lead to harsher penalties due to the public health risks involved with physical contact.
One response might be that schools, teachers and administrators will call police more often than before because now every small incident could have a danger component to it that didn't exist before.
Dayhoff said planning and communication will be key to avoiding such scenarios.
Don't make assumptions that your kid knows what's going on and what they need to do if they're going to be working independently. The more information they can get around that, the less likely they're going to be doing something that'll get themselves in trouble.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
San Diego might be allowed to reopen schools in a couple of weeks if COVID-19 cases remain low. There are some places in California where kids are already returning to classrooms. Brian Hickey shows us a school district east of Sacramento already taking that step.
It's the first day of school at Jackson Elementary in El Dorado Hills. Here, kids get to go back to class.
I really miss my friends a lot. Well, I like that my friends are at school, and that I get to learn a lot of stuff.
The Rescue Union School District is in El Dorado County, a county not on the state's COVID-19 watch list.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to come back. Our county is not on the watch list, so we're very, very fortunate to have this opportunity. We've taken it very seriously.
The students have been divided into morning and afternoon sessions. Each will go to school half day and do the rest distance learning. This keeps class sizes small for social distancing.
Children are staggered in the classroom so they don't sit next to another child for their instruction, and they're assigned the same seat for the year so they don't change seats. And again, all the surfaces and chairs, faucets, handles, everything is disinfected midday. All the playground equipment is disinfected midday, and it's assigned specifically to a class.
Parents are excited to send their kids back to school. Many more concerned if they had to keep them home.
He's a little social butterfly, so staying at home and not seeing his friends was really difficult.
Given the alternative, the kids don't mind the masks and all of the other new rules.
I think it's fine because it slows down the spread. Because I get to see my friends who are going to school.
Not everybody came back to school. The district offered a distance learning option. At this school, around 100 families opted to learn at home.
The teachers, the students, and the parents remain keenly aware that if there's a spike in the numbers, they could be forced back into distance learning. In El Dorado Hills, Brian Hickey, KCRA 3 News.
And it's been a hot week, making it even more of a challenge for companies forced to do business outdoors. But some are finding success. Max Rivlin-Nadler shows us how restaurants in City Heights are embracing this opportunity.
The afternoon rush looks a little bit different here on a sweltering August day at Pho Wa, where the menu has stayed the same pretty much since 1984. Hot pho soup, but now it's being served outdoors. An Kao is the owner of Pho Wa. For months during the pandemic, he relied on takeout and delivery for his restaurant, but he said that it wasn't enough to pay his bills.
It was hard to gauge how bad takeout was going to be. I would guesstimate probably lost like 80% of my business while trying to maintain 90% of my staff. That was hard.
The restaurant was founded by On's parents over 30 years ago, and he felt committed to keeping it open. So, like many other restaurant owners across San Diego, he adapted, going outdoors once the city loosened restrictions on outdoor dining.
When we're forced to do it outside, yeah, it's almost like you know what you know, but that you're also relearning all of these things as well. In terms of the cost of everything, you know, you almost have to view it as an investment, right? It costs what it costs.
Cow is not alone. Across El Cajon Boulevard, New E has completely altered its menu to offer Vietnamese-style street food, more typically found at a night market. Its owners purchased a large grill, and it's staying open later than other restaurants in the area. The El Cajon Boulevard Improvement Association has been helping local restaurants transition outdoors. Julie Tran runs Good Body Mortuary nearby and is a board member with the El Cajon BIA.
It feels right at home when you're sitting out there, and I was just thinking, sitting out there, that I just saved $2,000 from having to travel to Vietnam to experience this. I can just drive to City Heights to get that feel of being in Asia, sitting outside, nice weather, good food, you know, have friends, family around.
With San Diego's weather well suited to outdoor dining year-round, Tran hopes that business owners in Little Saigon don't give up on outdoor dining.
For a long time, we advocated, hey, can we dine outside, or can we experience this? But not a lot of the local business saw the same vision, because they're used to what they're used to, and now with COVID and us being open-minded to try to please everyone, I don't think it'll ever go back, and I sure hope it doesn't, to be honest.
Maxwell Nadler, KPBS News.
And that's all for this special edition of KPBS News. For all of us here at KPBS, I'm Maya Trabulsi. Thank you for joining us, and stay safe.